happens to every musician. The long way that you've gone with your instrument, I believe it is a sort of meditation. At least it's a special process. Because you have something, you dedicate your time and your fingers to it, and you have callus. It's all the mark of time. I'm finishing my master's in ethnomusicology here at SOS in London. And I started my musical training in traditional Chinese music when I was about 6 or 7 years old with this instrument. It's a 2-string fiddle called erhu. I'm not an active soloist on it anymore, but I played that for about 10 years before I started to learn this one. And it's a 7-string zither called Guqin. And now this is my focus of both my practice and academic interest. And it has, there are 13 of these inlays made of mother pearl, representing 12 months plus a leap month in 1 year. And the strings now, we use both silk strings and metal nylon strings. The volume of silk string is a bit lower than and the status of the string is less stable than the metal strings. So now, for stage performance, many players would use the metal. Having come to SOAS to ethnomusicology is one of the best decisions that I made in my life. SOAS is such a utopia place where all quirky persons can find their place no matter whatever they want to study regarding African and Asian culture. First of all, I get to be exposed to all this kind of music genres. I wouldn't have any chance to be exposed to them if I stayed in China. I mean, at least not all of this. And the academic atmosphere is it's very open and flexible, and students have freedom to study whatever they want to. Yeah, some older generation of players and scholars told me that in the 1990s, the instrument was almost dead. There were less than only 200 people playing it in China. I mean, even in history, there could be only several hundred people playing it because not many people got educated in the old time. But it was listed by the UNESCO in 2003 as one of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. And after that, it became suddenly people's passion about it in China suddenly sort of explode. So now definitely more and more people are getting interested in this instrument. But the instrument, in long history, it has been a quite intimate instrument, and the volume is not that loud. So, there are more and more people who might consider themselves as sort of educated people. It has probably 3,000 years history. It has been a solo instrument for at least more than 2,000 years. It was largely refrained within the elite class. So the traditional way to teach and learn Guqin is to initially just to copy what your teacher does. But learning in class is one thing. Practicing by yourself is another very important thing. So, in the first years, I used to practice maybe 6 or 7 years per day. So there will be calluses on your hands, and this happens to every player. Maybe a studio will lost half of the beginners after 1 or 2 years. Very few will stick to more than maybe 4 or 5 years. Those two will probably be capable of teaching in a few years. Because in the old times, to play music to entertain others was seen as a very low ranking activity. So, I mean, in terms of social status, those are entertainers. So the literati wanted to have their own music. So none of them would claim themselves as professional players. So they will claim themselves as amateur. Even like many of them, quite all of them was pretty achieved, but they still like claim it themselves as amateur musicians. Many musicians are trying to explore some new possibilities, such as to play with the orchestra, or even to rewrite some pieces in order to play with a larger ensemble, or to do fusion with other genres of music. Yeah, people are trying, experimenting new things. There are a lot of controversy and issues happening in the world of Qin and China now. One of them is internal debates. Of course, like revivalists, traditionalists will hold some opinion because they are more stick to old traditions. But there are other sort of innovationists or new generation of players who want something new, or who want to try to see if there are other possibilities of this instrument, because they sort of think that the playing techniques or ideology and practice was settled way too early, because it has a history of like 3,000 years old. So some new adventurers would think that it's been fixed. Society is changing, music is changing with it. You can't isolate music and freeze it there, and isolating it from its social and cultural context. So, yeah, it's a shame that a lot of the tradition has lost. But it's natural. It happens to every instrument in the world, in every culture, in every country. But there are always people trying to experimenting something new. Not only now, but I believe in history, maybe in Song Dynasty, when musicians held that we should do more left hand in our Choju. I believe there were many others who were against that, but that's how the world develops. So it's when I play the Guqin, I think recent years somehow I've grown a seasonal. I mean, I've naturally grown a seasonal response to maybe a relationship between me, myself, and the instrument. That means when it comes to winter, I will spontaneously want to play something like 白雪 to sort of interact with the nature. And when it comes to summer, I will want to play something like Aoi or something summer. Playing an instrument is by itself a way of meditation. This whole resurgence thing about Guqin is not by itself. It's located in this broader picture where more contemporary Chinese people are trying to revive different traditional culture, actually, including calligraphy, like we said, 国学班, like traditional ideologies, even Confucianism. So it's, I think the whole phenomenon, including the revival of Guqin, is an attempt to try to revive this sense of identity, Chineseness. So, but now, since China is getting stronger and stronger, and also the world is getting smaller and smaller and smaller due to the globalization. So Chinese people are more and more aware of this. I think they want to be sort of acknowledged by the world community. I think it's still a way of rebuild this self-confidence. I mean, to feel that, oh, I'm as Western, even foreigners think our culture is precious and means something. People are trying to, there are always people who is serious about passing down the tradition itself. Either they are more revivalist or more innovationalist. Those people are, at least they're serious about what they're doing. They're giving serious thoughts about the future of the instrument. Nobody knows the future actually, but we can hope for it. We can anticipate it to some extent. And the reason I'm doing my research now is to maybe to discuss and to analyze what's happening now, and maybe I can hope to come to a conclusion where I could sort of anticipate a future or suggest of proper ways to sustain the culture.